It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here, of course, on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. As well, a little bit of a secret here, you can also view the show on YouTube. That's right. We post the video portion of this show on YouTube as well. So lots of ways to consume RealAg Radio, but it's great to have you here with us on Sirius XM on Rural Radio 147 here today. Okay, important topics. Number one, weather. We're going to talk with Matt Makens of Makens Weather. He's based in Denver, Colorado. We're going to really dive into, I guess, the North American forecast because, you know, as much as sometimes we try to separate regions, it all kind of connects together. What happens in one region has an impact on another. What are some of the surprises here in the first 4 months, or I guess we're now into 5 months, 6 months? My math is terrible. We're almost halfway through the year. What are the surprises? What are the things that concerns Matt? And what does the rest of June, July, and August look like if you're farming in the Corn Belt, Western Canadian Prairies, Northern Plains, Central Canada, Eastern Canada? You get the point. So we're going to talk to Matt here today on the program. We're also going to hear from Barrie Mann. He's with Genesis Fertilizer, trying to build a very large facility, producer-owned, farmer-owned fertilizer plant. He's going to talk about the why of that. He was just over actually in Asia and went to a fertilizer conference. He's got some things to bring home to you. So that'll be a product spotlight with Genesis Fertilizer today. We're also going to hear from Senator Rob Black. He's going to talk to us about a new committee report on soil health. Now, this has been something that he's been talking about for quite some time. They've come out with the report. He's got some recommendations, and I want you to listen to what he has to say, because I know soil health is important to you, but I want your feedback on the recommendations. Do you think that they are on point? Do you think they missed some stuff? Would like your feedback on that. And we'll also have some time today for the top ag news stories of the day. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, of course, you can always send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. As well, you can call the RealAg feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. You know, speaking of podcasts, Real Agriculture, on top of this one, has a ton of different podcasts that we're producing on a daily basis. Okay. And so you can go to realagriculture.com/podcasts, or just, type Real Ag into, any of the platforms that you use, like Spotify or Apple Podcast. So whether it's, this show or our show that's actually called Real Ag on the Weekend, that's in Saskatchewan on the Ralco Radio Network, there's that. Mind Your Farm Business, totally focused on financial or farm management topics, large farms, small farms. It applies to all of you. There's leadership stuff there. There's human resources. There's marketing. It's a great podcast that we do monthly. We got Wheat Pete's Word that you hear about all the time. New episode drops every Wednesday. So here today, a new episode will be up where Pete answers your agronomic questions of the agronomist, the beef market update, successors, like a ton of different podcasts. So please check those out. And if you go to realagriculture.com/podcast, you can find out more about all of those and a whole lot more. Hey, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk weather. I hope Matt has some good news. I'm hoping, fingers are crossed, we'll see what he says when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Want a product that will give you nitrogen all season long? Then you want to try Envita. Envita gets directly into the cells of the plants, and it's easy to apply, foliar or in furrow. Envita provides the flexibility you need for your farm practices. Whether you want to reduce your nitrogen and maintain yield, or maintain your nitrogen and increase yield, Envita fits your farm. Envita SC formulation is OMRI registered. To learn more about Envita, visit azotic.com. That's AZOTIC.com.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch WheatPete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Okay, let's talk about what's going on with the weather. We have seen some really interesting conditions of course, in Canada as well as the United States. Some good, some bad. It's a real mixture, as we would expect in any given growing season for farmers and ranchers. Here to talk about what's happening is Matt Makens of Makens Weather out of Denver, Colorado. Matt, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me back. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, well, depending on who you talk to and where they're located, I think that's a good way to look at it. You know, southwestern United States, hot.
Hot, dry. Usually we'd be looking for their monsoon right now. At least the signs of it to kick in. It doesn't look like a very good one. So they're that cranky territory, down in the southwest for sure.
Now in Western Canada, things are looking a lot better, Matt. Like we got some moisture that we have not had for a number of years. You look at the Manitoba moisture map, you look at the Saskatchewan moisture map, looking pretty good, but it's pretty early in the growing season and it's just starting to heat up. What can we expect here June, July, August as we look at this crop?
Sure. Well, the timing was pretty good for, the optimism of the season, getting things started. Cattle are looking good. Corn, I know we have some delays here and there with plant and all that, but what a difference, since 2000, 1920, somewhere in there. So yeah, big difference there. Going forward, the last time you and I chatted was in February down in Orlando, and we talked about the timing of this transition, the transition being going from El Nino to La Nina, and how the moisture would either arrive early or late depending on the speed of this arrival of La Nina. And to an extent, we still have to kind of worry about that for the summer and the fall. But really, the big global picture, once you hit summer, a lot of these impactors that get so much buzzword headlines, they kind of just chill out. Summer is the lowest impact for El Nino or La Nina. So how you start off your summer is more telling than going forward. I think as we go forward, we have to get a little more worried about the heat, temperature. It was a very warm winter, obviously. That has not changed. It's still very warm. So temperatures, in my mind, if I'm a producer in Canada, I'm thinking temperatures. How do I adapt to a hotter summer? What does that mean looking forward? And then from there, then of course you're thinking, okay, well, are we shutting the water down? And not necessarily. We're going to have to worry about the timing of that water. Is it hitting at that perfect reproductive time? Is it hitting when I'm trying to cut? Whatever that may be. But temperatures to me is the biggest issue summer. And then we'll look for the timing of that precipitation as we go forward to be more and more critical.
Yeah, if let's just say we didn't get moisture again, we would be in real trouble in Western Canada because of the fact we don't have that reserve, right? We've had some moisture and precipitation, and that's great. But as the audience continues to remind me whenever I talk about, hey, the good conditions out there, hey, Shaun, it's early. We don't have a lot of depth to this reserve, and we're going to need some more fairly soon here. High temperature, but the fact that we've had moisture early, kind of what I've heard from you, I just want to make sure I got this straight. Because we had moisture early in the season, does that raise the probability that we have it as the season moves on? Is that the case? Like rain brings more rain?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, that will be helpful. Yes. I think it's more of setting the stage, if you will. It's not to say that, May is wet, all of your summer is going to be wet.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. But let's take a look at the prairies, especially the western prairies. That's like the east side of the Rocky Mountains all the way through the United States. If you get really good spring moistures, which a lot of us did, you can overcome that dry patch, say in early July, more easily than if you didn't have that moisture.
Yeah.
So I meant more, so I didn't want to be misleading with that comment. I meant more of, we have a good foundation. We have a good place to start, which is better than we've been for years. So as we go forward and we hit those 2-week dry phases in late June, early July, mid-July, when we hit those drier patches, the corn, the grass, whatever's already happy. So the timing, as it spreads out, is still not necessarily bad. Whereas last year, if we were talking about 2-week dry patch in July, well, that could ruin everything.
Yep, absolutely. As we look at the Corn Belt and move up in towards central and eastern Canada, what's happening there? We've obviously got this U.S. corn crop off to a pretty decent start. That hasn't been necessarily the case in a province like Ontario, where they've been challenged with a lot of moisture. People having trouble getting out and spraying now as well. People having to switch from corn to beans to complete the planting. What kind of weather pattern are you seeing across that stretch of North America?
Okay, take the Iowa, Illinois, into Indiana, the 3 I states, move them northward over the Great Lakes up into your grain region. Everything has been wet through April and May, depending on exactly where you are, but a good wet phase, as you mentioned. As you go throughout your summer, we're going to see conditions, the frequency of your moisture is going to spread out as we go forward. There's going to be a good wet period, whether it be mid-July, late July, August, something like that. But the timing of that window has to be exact. Or else we're going to start to see more volatility in these prices saying, we didn't get that water, silking is not good enough, or whatever that may be. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. So don't take that, because we're in a good weather pattern.
Yeah.
But just take my meaning to be, okay, Matt's telling us the frequency of water is spreading out. If it's not in that 10-day window I need it, it's going to be hot. If it's not raining, it's going to be hot. So we will have some impact there. I don't think the price volatility of any grain is going to be silent until we pass late July, just because this weather is becoming, it was so wet, a lot of change to plans, but now it's going to become, did we get the rain in that 2-week window or whatever it may be for you in the right place?
Yeah.
Things are going to progressively get drier.
Okay. Well, so take it while you can get it. What I'm hearing there.
Yeah. But there are parts of as you go far eastern Ontario, all the way to the Maritimes. As we go through summer and things do get progressively drier. So if I'm sitting there today, being like, it's just too wet, I've got to get drier weather. It is going to go into that area. It will be moving in. It's probably too late for a lot of corn guys, so they're switching or they're going to a hybrid that's shorter maturation, whatever it may be. But going forward, that stretch of Canada down to the northern U.S., the Great Lakes, does get drier from summer into fall with this pattern. And then, next spring we'll get some water in things, but not growing season.
But we at the beginning we were talking about how hot it's been in the Southwest. What does that balloon of heat, or there's probably a better term than that, but I'll just say that heat dome or that balloon of heat that is in that area. What is that doing to the rest of North America, and what happens to that heat?
And the problem is we're going to have really serious drought issues here, and they're going to kick in really rapidly. The southwestern U.S., the wettest part of their year is during the monsoon, which kicks in, depending on exact location, mid to late June, goes through July, August, tapers off. And it's not like a steady rainfall. It kind of comes in little spurts, but that's the primary time to get water on that grass. And we're not likely to have that at all this year. And they're already in drought because the winter El Nino really didn't do much water for them. So they're already in drought. It's already hot, a lot of record heat. That just compounds this issue. There's a feedback going on. So now we're getting progressively drier faster than normal, warmer faster than normal, and that drought area is going to expand. It's going to move into Kansas, Colorado, Utah, western Texas, keep growing and spreading out. So for the U.S., cattle production is going to have a lot. If I see cheap hay today, I'm buying it. If I'm a forage person, this year my wheat was good, my oats were okay, whatever it may be. Next year I'm going to plan on not very good forage because this drought's going to overtake my area. If I'm a corn producer in the U.S. or hay, alfalfa in the northern states, my outlook is not as grim. We may have periods of drought, but overall my hay may do well, my grasses may do well. I'm looking at a good corn crop because we have optimism. I just got to worry about my timing in July and hope there's not a flash drought or severe weather damage or something. But yeah, that's the southwestern U.S. is going to be the problem area to start with, and we're going to see the drought numbers just increase too quickly there.
Which area in North America, like that sounds like kind of the biggest concern when you look at North America? What's the area that you feel the most optimistic about from a weather cooperating standpoint? Is there one that comes to mind?
For the rest of the year,
yeah.
I'm optimistic if I'm in the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, most of the corn country. I'm optimistic because of what we had this spring. Yeah. If that spring moisture didn't happen, I would be a pessimist. But I like where we are today, and I can deal with the timing coming forward. So, from even a longer term perspective, let's say I'm sitting here today and everything's in the ground, I'm just watching it grow. Next year, I'm still optimistic if I'm a corn grower, any cereal grains, beets, anything like that in the northern U.S., I'm still pretty good because I'm going to have a cold, wet winter. Hopefully I have a lot of snow. That's going to help me next year. So yeah, the northern states, the Pacific Northwest, those kind of areas, that's where I'm optimistic.
Well, and then that includes the Western Canadian prairies then too, does it not?
Yeah. As we go into La Nina, usually, across Canada, the northern U.S., usually La Nina was a great snow producer for the West, for our high plains and your prairies, Peace region also. La Nina used to be classically a very good snow producer, and that kind of set the stage for our water, obviously, for the next year. It's tapered off a little bit, but still, it's a good supply of moisture. At least it gives us the opportunity to get some snows and rains in here. So Canadian Rockies, our northern Rockies, that kind of region can do very well with La Ninas in the wintertime to get that water.
Yeah. What's been your biggest surprise this year so far?
I came into the season with some optimism for wetness, but not as widespread as it has been.
Okay.
Iowa, we started for Iowa up to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, sitting in April, we had, all of us were kind of worried, It's like, wow, we really dried out this winter, especially Iowa. We have historic drought. Some counties haven't been this dry in 100 years. And then late April and May kind of kicked in, and we kind of said, oh, yeah, we're going to get water. But the magnitude of that water was really tremendous. And every week that I look at the prairies and up to the northern parts of the province, there's a lot of water on those precip forecast maps. So, yeah, I think my window of optimism was maybe 3 weeks around May, sometime into early June. But, man, that 3-week window is looking like a 6 or 7, 8 week window for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But if somebody's listening in the Peace region right now, they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a large geography too, right? Like
it's largely been favoring the east side of the Rockies all the way across. So that's been my surprise is that window of wetness, it sure turned out to be wet and it's lasting longer.
Good message there for people in some of those cattle producing areas from a forage perspective. That's some great thoughts.
Yeah,
hey,
great start to the season for a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But thinking ahead for sure. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
You bet. I always appreciate to ramble to you. So
Absolutely. Oh, great analysis and thoughts on some of the weather patterns in Canada and the U.S. and how all of that connects together. Hey, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to product spotlight with Genesis Fertilizer right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today. Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit CanolaSchool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola. It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight, this time with Genesis Fertilizer. We're joined by the Vice President of Investor Relations with Genesis Fertilizers. It is Barrie Mann. Barrie, great to chat with you again.
Hey, good morning, Shaun. Great to meet.
Yeah, okay, so Barrie, let's talk about what's going on at Genesis. But before we do that, I want to hop over and find a little bit more about, you recently attended a major international fertilizer conference in Singapore. What did you learn there?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways, and there was a number of them, but it was really confirmation as to what the world fertilizer scene looks like and what those supply-demand dynamics are, and also just, the impacts of all the recent, over the last 3-4 years, all that geopolitical risk that's happening and how that's affecting fertilizer, and really, the prices, how that affects particularly Western Canadian farmers and farmers in general across Canada. So it was really there to get confirmation of what we're doing with the Genesis project and why, and ensuring that the, kind of the things that we've put in place and what we're discussing with farmers here in the ground, is real. And what came out is it's extremely real. All the major players were showing that they've got true concerns regarding those geopolitical risks. Whether it's kind of crazy. We've got the lowest cost of production to make fertilizer here, but we're paying the world's highest prices, and it's basically due to the fact that this whole supply-demand balance is we're sitting here so far away from port positions, and we from the main production areas in the world, that we're kind of subjected to all of those dynamics. And it really reinforced what we're trying to do in building a new facility in Western Canada to take advantage of those real life logistics and supply demand issues and just bring that more production home.
Okay, so if you think about it, these global trends that here at the conference that are being discussed in obviously at the farm level, what impact are these global trends having actually on Canadian farmers?
Well, for example, when you look at the shipping routes and you look at the actual maps of where fertilizer is moving around the world, you really don't see a lot coming into North America, right? There's enough just to kind of meet that demand. So because of those distances and the time, the turnaround, to bring that fertilizer in, so we're just kind of held captive to the current production that we have. And there's no quick fix. One presentation that was given was regarding the investment and the projected investment over the next, and they look long-term here, like you look out 10 years, right?
Yep.
And there was nothing other than Genesis really on the map for North America. And when these big worldwide companies are looking to where they're going to deploy their assets, one thing that came out, and you look at, East Asia, you look at, countries like India, even Brazil, and across in South America, and where the demand is increasing more there. So these big companies are looking at more of those areas where they're going to deploy capital, just because of that growth demand. So North America, we're looking at, say, 1.5% growth. Some of these other countries I mentioned are upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8% growth, right? And in urea, in nitrogen fertilizers. So that all impacts those investment decisions, and there's no quick turnaround, right? Like, it's not like you can just flip the switch. We're experiencing that. We're a number of years into this project, but we're now well on our way. Engineering is in full force. Land is in play. We're meeting with all the major players that are going to design and build the project. So we're moving forward. So what Genesis is doing, we looked at that current supply demand differential, which right now shows about 1 million ton for Canada, 5 million ton for the United States. So there's about a North American 6 million ton shortfall. Our plant's going to be about 1.1 million ton of production of gross tons. So when we look at that and we look at that market share, we've only got room in the project for somewhere between 15 and 20% market share. So we're targeting those farmers that want to be directly vertically integrated, because Genesis will sell at market price. We're just joining the club, we're joining the market. But the difference is, instead of major hedge funds and foreign governments owning our fertilizer production, it's going to be owned by the farmers. So the farmers are coming on, they're investing to a level that represents their fertilizer usage on the farm. So if they're using 500 ton, they're basically going to own enough shares that represent the 500 ton of fertilizer. They then receive the profits and the dividends on those tons. So their net fertilizer price at the end of the day will be closer to the manufacturer's cost, which right now is, according to our data, it's about $240 in Western Canada. That includes interest on the debt. So when it's selling at $700 or $800, or in 2022, $1,250, there's a significant amount of profitability in these enterprises that are going to come back to the farm.
Great stuff. Well, if anybody out there in the Real Agriculture and RealAg Radio audience is interested in finding out more about Genesis Fertilizer and this project and how potentially they can participate, make sure you go to genesisfertilizers.com. Hey, Barrie, thanks a lot for joining us here today. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Shaun.
Awesome stuff. A very, very cool project. There's major progress being made, following this one very, very closely. Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and Prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
In the prior segment, we were hearing from Barrie Mann of Genesis Fertilizers. Hard to believe it's been over 30 years since a fertilizer plant has been built in Canada. That is quite amazing. I'm sure there's some reasons for that. Regulatory probably fits into it, environmental, capital requirements. That's a big project. Very, very interesting stuff, and great to see kind of an initiative like that trying to get off the ground here in the country of Canada here in 2024. Well, AgZone Bin Logic is a grain monitoring solution designed to transform the way growers manage their grain storage. With streamlined installation, subscription-based pricing, and adaptability to your farm's needs, speak to your local co-op agro center expert today about AgZone Bin Logic and see how we can help you protect your yields. Well, it's been a long anticipated report. We've been hearing about The Standing Senate Committee on Agriculture and Forestry's look into soil health and the importance of soil in Canada. The report is out, and joining us to discuss it is Senator Rob Black. Senator Black, great to see you again.
Thanks very much, Shaun. It's good to be seen. Good to be here with you.
Okay, so before we get into some of the details of the report, let's talk about the why. Why did the Senate committee dive into this? Why do this at all?
So when I joined the Senate 6 years ago, I was encouraged to consider looking at soil health again. The Senate looked at soil health back in 1984 with the first soil health report, which Senator Herbert Sparrow from Saskatchewan spearheaded, and that report, now 40 years in existence, was groundbreaking and moved the soil health agenda forward over those past 40 years. So, over the course of my 6 years here, I've worked to get the study underway. And 2 years ago, we did get an order of reference from the Senate, and moved forward with it. So it's 2 years, about 4 years in the making, and 2 years underway.
Now, in the report, you recommend that soil should be designated as a strategic asset in Canada. You mentioned Australia and some of the work they've been doing. Making it a strategic asset, what does that accomplish? What does that do?
I think it shows Canadians and shows governments of all orders the idea that we need to look after our soils. As one of our witnesses says, we don't have another 40 years to deal with this. The UN says that by 2050, we could be 90% of our soil could be degraded around the world. So with Canada having 6.7% of arable land in Canada that we can work, and that number it keeps shrinking because of other factors, we need to be critical of looking at our soil health.
Now, I'm sure that all the witnesses you talked to, no one said, don't worry about it. Soil, not important. I'm sure that didn't come up. But what do we actually do? Because I think at 100,000 feet, everybody's on the same page. It's when we get down to the 30,000 or 10,000 foot level, being a little bit more granular, where I'm sure there is some differences of opinion. So from your standpoint, what are the key recommendations here that Canada needs to embark on?
Well, I think the first 5 or 6 are most important, and I'm just going to turn to them here.
Yeah.
Designating it as a national a national asset, and putting in place a soil advocate. In Australia, they had a soils advocate. Penny Wensley was a soils advocate for 5 years, and prior to that, there was a previous one. That individual, that position, went across the country and advocated for soil health at all orders of government and with organizations and individuals. So we took that idea and are proposing it here. We also think there's need for an overarching strategy around soil health. What do we need to do nationally to make sure that we can have soil that will grow our food well into the future? I know that there's some work being done by the Soil Conservation Council of Canada. So, this isn't a stretch. This is something that the government could support further and move forward with it. Collaborating with the provinces and territories, I think, is important. And what we found was there's a lot of good work being done across the country, but there's not a lot of sharing. And so putting in place a national portal, per se, an institute that might be a place where all data can reside, will support the country in the work that's being done.
What role does government play versus individuals or organizations? Talk about some of the differences.
Yeah, I think the government can support financially and through policy development. We did hear that there's a one-size-fits-all policy across this country doesn't work. We know that. You and I both know that. But the need for support financially and encouragement through policy development will be important by the feds. But this report should resonate, I hope, with provinces and territories, municipalities as well. There are municipalities out there, my own home county of Wellington County here in Ontario, is doing some great stuff with respect to soil health and supporting agricultural farmers who are doing good things in Wellington County. But so I hope it resonates with federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal councils.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is there's a lack of data on soil health in Canada. Do you get a sense of how we develop more of a data set? Because if we don't have the data, it's very difficult to figure out where we're actually headed or what some of the benchmarks or KPIs are related to moving the needle on this issue. So how do we work on the data piece?
Sure, and not so much there's not necessarily a lack of data. There is some lack of data, but it's more the bringing it together. So work that's being done in Saskatchewan stays in Saskatchewan. It's not necessary. We heard that it's not necessarily shared with Guelph and Dalhousie and other universities across the country. So our recommendation talks about a national portal that all that information can be uploaded to, so that it can be shared. There is need work required around soil sampling and things like that in certain places. Again, I speak to my own province of Ontario. The provincial government's doing some good stuff, and have for a few years. So, but we need to see that across the country.
So just to focus on the information sharing for a second, what because of the regional differences and because of the difference in practices, if you look at what's I was just in Halifax, you look at some of the practices there versus what you'd see outside of Swift Current. What benefit is the information sharing if we have such large regional differences? We heard that there would be benefit in sharing that information, so that how we deal with that with the soils in those areas, because we may learn, other areas may learn from what's being done. Any sense on where Canada stands relative to some other comparable countries, Australia, New Zealand, the U.S., England, and others?
I think Australia is far ahead of us, essentially because of their 2021 soil strategy and their soils advocate that they've had in place for about 10 years, until a year or so ago. England, they've got a strong soil, United Kingdom has a strong soil advocacy program and work being done through extension. I would say we're up there, but I'm not sure we're ahead of the pack. And I go back to the fact that we don't have 40 more years to just let this slide. We need to work now. My concern is we're going to wake up someday down the road and realize that we can't feed ourselves, let alone the country or the world.
Okay, so I'm getting the sense, though, that we are behind when you say that. So what are you using to create that conclusion? Is it organic matter? Is it other soil characteristics?
Well, there's the rub. Even across Canada, we can't agree on what soil health means. And so that's another recommendation. Government needs to work with provinces and territories and organizations to actually determine what healthy soil looks like. So it's we can create a baseline across the country. Mine is just anecdotally when I speak to the fact that I did attend a few conferences internationally, where we did hear of some good things being done around the world. So that's where I come from. We're not way behind the eight ball. I think we're doing some good stuff, but it's time to step up the mark.
From a legislation standpoint, does the committee feel there are gaps there or things that need to be done on whether it's legislation or the regulation side, or what did you find with that?
We felt there was a need for more carrots than sticks. So we needed to encourage farmers, producers, ranchers to do good things. Lots of folks out there are doing good things, and we did see that as we traveled across the country. But certainly lots more can be done. I think specifically about rental property around, GTA and other metropolitan areas. Rental properties who land is owned by developers and other entities are are rented out on a year-by-year basis. And we heard from farmers who will not put a significant amount of effort into maintaining that soil health because they don't know that they've got it for a year after this. And so we need to work on those types of things as well, especially when you think about the property that's farmed around metropolitan areas across the country.
Now, this is the part that Canada does really well. The talking to stakeholders and putting together a report, the action component. What does the committee want to see from an action standpoint? Where do we go from here, from your point of view?
So the report was tabled last week. It will be, we'll move a motion sometime this week. I hope to send it to the federal government with the expectation that they'll reply to our report in a response within 150 days. And so that is a requirement. If we put it in the motion, that is a requirement. And my hope is that they'll respond to how they're going to move this forward. Will we keep an eye on it? Absolutely. My colleagues, I guess I'll admit that I had to talk them into undertaking this study, but the 12 individuals on the committee really bit down on this as we move forward. And so they're very excited about this report and want to see things move forward. So we'll be watching it. I think the final recommendation is the fact that the government should have an annual conference of federal ministers. The federal, provincial, and territorial governments give special consideration to economic viability. So when they think about policies there, it's meant to, we need to always keep in mind that farmers need to be able to make money from the work they're doing. So they can't be expected to do this without some support.
Yeah, good points there indeed. Senator Black, thanks a lot for joining us here today. Really, really appreciate it. I know this has been very much a passion project for you. You've talked about it a lot over the past number of times that we have had the chance to chat. So congratulations on completing the project, and we'll definitely follow up with you in terms of some of the implementation, the action items, and how the government responded. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Shaun.
Would love your feedback on the soil health report that the Senate committee worked on. We just heard about from Senator Black. Would love your feedback. What do you think needs to happen? What do you think about the recommendations? What do you think about dealing with the regional differences across the country? And do we actually need a national body to be really a soil advocate? I want to hear from you and your thoughts. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to get to the top ag news stories of the day right after this.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, it's time for the top ag news stories of the day. And lots going on in the world of agriculture. Indeed, strike action, labor issues, a big issue happening right now in Canada for sure. So the unions representing more than 9,000 Canada Border Services Agency employees announced on Tuesday that they have reached a tentative agreement with the federal government averting a strike that honestly would have been devastating in so many ways. It would have disrupted trade and caused delays at border crossings and airports across the country. There's a tourism component to this, but there's also a huge business component to it. The members of the Public Service Alliance of Canada and the Customs and Immigration Union were in a position to strike as of last week, but stayed on the job as both sides were in mediation. So that is great news that they have come to an agreement. Let's hope that sucker gets ratified. Now, meanwhile, While we've got some good, we've also got some bad. A second Cargill meat processing facility, this one in Calgary, faces a labor disruption following a strike vote June 10th. Union employees represented by the UFCW 401 voted 100% in favor of a strike. Now, this is the Calgary case-ready plant. It's a secondary processing facility. Workers plan to not only picket at the facility, but also do secondary picketing at retail stores that carry Cargill meat and also some Cargill products. This is also going to happen in front of places like Walmart, Safeway, and Superstore. Quote here from the union saying secondary picketing at the retail stores will be the action that will put the most pressure on Cargill to give workers a fair contract offer that addresses their needs. It is also the most fun part of picketing. Oh, okay. The union says that this strike is about higher wages to keep up with the rapidly increasing cost of living. There's another point here, too, that the union makes. If this happens, it will be our first affordability crisis strike, an action that could set a precedent for future fights for workers' rights and fair contracts that address people's needs at workplaces such as Safeway, Superstore, JBS, Ollie Mill, and Cargill's plant in High River, according to the union. So that's the case-ready plant in Calgary. We will have to see if that would cause a backup into places like Cargill, High River. Of course, we also have the Guelph plant that has capacity of 1,500 head per day. It's also under strike action right now. So, and plus the railway strike, that potential, a lot of labor action right now that's impacting agriculture for sure. The federal government's plan to raise the capital gains inclusion rate in less than 2 weeks will increase the tax bill on the sale of a typical Canadian grain farm by 30% based on research conducted by the Grain Growers of Canada. Grain Growers has written a letter to Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and is launching a campaign to raise awareness about the impact of the bill on family farms across the country, coinciding with the introduction of the awaited legislation to implement the tax change this week. So the example that the grain growers are giving is, their research shows an 800-acre farm in Ontario that acquired its land in 96 would pay an extra $1.2 million or 31% if selling at current land prices when the proposed changes take effect, using historical land prices from Farm Credit Canada's database. Now, a 2,500-acre farm in Alberta would face a similar increase, while a 4,000-acre farm in Saskatchewan would face more than $900,000 increase on its farm sale tax bill. Substantial. So we've got farm groups galore speaking out against this. CCA, the Canadian Cattle Association, was out with a release, and also the Cattle Youth Council also. So we've got, using the youth side of the beef business as well, saying, hey, this is too much. Now, Minister Freeland has been talking about how this is a fair way to have taxation in Canada. And it seems to be all of a sudden a solution for her to the healthcare crisis in this country, which I say, I don't think so. Just throwing more, I'm not saying it doesn't need to be, it definitely needs to be fixed. But this is the solution? Just more money because we're taxing more businesses? There seems to be some gaps there for me. Now, out this morning, the U.S. had some new inflation data. Inflation in the United States eased in May for a second straight month. A hopeful sign that pickup in prices that occurred early this year may have passed. The trend, if it holds, could move the Federal Reserve closer to cutting its benchmark interest rate from its 23-year peak. Consumer prices, excluding volatile food and energy costs, rose 0.2% from April to May, the government said on Wednesday. Now, that was down from 0.3% the previous month, and that was the smallest increase since October. There was an expectation for that 0.3% to continue as well. Fed officials who will end their latest policy meeting later Wednesday are scrutinizing each month's inflation data to assess their progress in the fight against rising prices. And we're recording this show prior to getting that information from the Fed on terms of what they did. But there was a strong expectation from analysts that they were not going to do anything with rates. Everyone's looking now to September as the time. The World Bank raised its global economic forecasts or growth forecast for this year to 2.6%, up from January's 2.4%, driven by a strong U.S. economic expansion. However, it warns that climate change, wars, and high debt will negatively impact developing nations, particularly in the sub-Saharan African sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, where growth estimates have been lowered. My tongue's tied. The other thing it mentioned too is it's been really hard for, use the example of Africa trying to attract capital to create some growth. That has definitely also been a bit of an issue, or is an issue. John Deere announced today expanded availability of its enhanced self-repair solution through the Equipment mobile app, enabling customers in Canada to remotely download secure software updates directly to embedded controllers on compatible 4G connected John Deere equipment. In addition, the company announced expanded availability for Canadian customers and independent repair providers to purchase Customer Service Advisor directly from John Deere, in addition to availability through John Deere dealers. Quote here from Denver Caldwell. He is the Vice President for Aftermarket and Customer Support. He said, "We are focused on developing and delivering new and enhanced solutions that enable our customers to repair their equipment and minimize downtime." We'd like to know, hey, if you are using that app, what are your thoughts on it? Does it do what the company says it does? We'd love your feedback on that. Haney at RealAgriculture.com. Brazil has a tax change that's driving China to buy U.S. soybeans. A surprise tax change in Brazil, the world's largest soybean exporter, has led Chinese buyers to purchase at least 208,000 tons of U.S. soybeans since the change was announced. This marks the first such transaction since January. The tax measure, which limits Brazil's commodity exporters and processors from monetizing some tax credits, has faced significant opposition from companies in Congress, prompting Finance Minister Fernando Haddad to consider withdrawing it. This is according to Bloomberg. China's shift to U.S. soybeans is due to Brazilian buyers' inability to pass the higher cost to farmers, reducing Brazil's offers. So major crop merchants, including ADM, Bunge Global, of course, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus, represented by the industry groups of ABIOV, warned that the measure would cut profits for soybean processors, leading some traders to withdraw new offers for soybeans and corn. It's funny how taxes and tax policy has an impact on where people want to do business. Funny. It's amazing how that works. The European Union ordered 40 million bird flu vaccines from CSL Limited to prevent the potential spread of the virus to humans. This 4-year contract comes in response to the rapid spread of the avian influenza at U.S. dairy farms, where the virus has recently begun infecting dairy cattle after previously affecting millions of birds. There are concerns the disease could spread further. Vatterstad is bringing enhanced precision capabilities to its line of tipple planters and also adding a new model which is now for sale in Canada. New to the line is the Tempo K. It's a 24-row planter with low compaction tracks and 30-inch row spacing. It features a 150-bushel central fill system and optional 1,500-gallon liquid carrying capacity. It's designed for conditions faced by many Canadian farmers. The Tempo K is manufactured at Vatterstad's North Dakota facility. So produced in North Dakota. Look at that. Optional precision features will be made available for select models. There's a whole list, and I think we got this story posted at RealAgriculture.com. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, we would love to hear from you. All you got to do is send me an email, shaney at realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find Real Agriculture across all the social media platforms. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. And we'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.